I need to tell you about something that's happening right now in Arkansas, and honestly, it should terrify all of us. Farmers are making the most heartbreaking decision you can imagine in agriculture. They're destroying perfectly good crops in their fields. And I'm not talking about damaged crops or weather disasters. These are healthy, mature crops that farmers are plowing under or leaving to rot because the math literally doesn't work anymore. Let me tell you about Scott Matthews from Poinsett County. He said something that really stuck with me. He hit 3 home runs this year on rice, corn, and soybeans. Record yields, perfect growing conditions, everything a farmer dreams about, and he still came up short. Think about that for a second. The best crop year you could possibly have, and you're still losing money. The University of Arkansas just released its analysis for 2025, and here's what they found. Every single crop in Arkansas loses money. Cotton farmers lose $352.75 per acre. Corn farmers lose $273.71 per acre. Rice farmers lose $258.84 per acre. Soybeans lose $85.22 per acre. There's not a single budget that produces a positive return when you factor in all production costs. Now here's where it gets really brutal, and this is the part that a lot of people don't understand. Harvesting costs money, lots of money. You need diesel for the combines, labor to run the equipment, trucks to haul the grain, maintenance on machinery, and storage costs if you can't sell immediately. So think about this. If you're a cotton farmer already losing $352 per acre, and you spend another $150 per acre to harvest, now you're losing $500 per acre total. You're actually making the situation worse by bringing in your crop. Charles Williams has been farming for 30 years in Crittenden County. He told me something I'll never forget. He said 2025 was the first time he's ever gone into a crop year knowing it wasn't profitable no matter what crop you planted. The first time in 3 decades when you knew you were going to lose money before you even put a seed in the ground. But farmers planted anyway because what else are they going to do? Now it's harvest time and the real nightmare begins. Let me walk you through the costs. Diesel prices might be down 16% from last year, but that's still way higher than historical averages. A combine burns 20 to 30 gallons per hour. At current prices, that's $75 to $100 per hour just in fuel. Run that combine for a 12-hour day and you're burning through $900 to $1,200 in diesel alone. Labor costs hit a record $413 million across Arkansas in 2025. That's up 9% since 2021. And here's the thing. Finding harvest workers is nearly impossible because everyone knows farmers can't pay competitive wages when they're losing money on every acre. The workers who do show up know they might not get paid if the farm goes under. The Mississippi River situation made everything worse. During early harvest, the river was so low from drought that barges couldn't carry full loads. Draft restrictions meant less grain per barge, which raised shipping costs. Grain elevators got backed up. Farmers had grain ready to harvest, but nowhere to take it. Some had to leave crops in the field waiting for space at the elevator. Mike Ellis from Randolph County laid out the reality in a way that really hit me. He said it's not so much his plan for next year, but what the lenders will allow him to do. When you're borrowing $3 million to $5 million to put a crop in, the lenders dictate everything. And when they look at these numbers, they're saying no more. The emotional toll here is devastating. At the Brooklyn meeting in September, 400 farmers showed up during harvest season. These are people who should have been in their fields bringing in crops. Instead, they drove 3 hours each way to beg for help. One farmer stood up and said his grandfather survived the Great Depression. His father survived the 1980s farm crisis, but he won't survive this. Shannon Hall's story is the worst one I've heard. He represents 10 generations of farming going back to the Revolutionary War. At his peak, he farmed 10,000 acres with his father and uncles. In 2022, A hailstorm destroyed 25% of his rice crop. He's been in the red ever since. He couldn't get a single lender to extend credit for 2025. His father ended up in the hospital in 2024, and they only made it through harvest with help from neighbors. Now let me explain what the process of destroying your own crop actually looks like, because this is soul-crushing. You spent all spring preparing the land. You paid for seed that cost 25% more than it did in 2020. You paid for fertilizer that's been elevated since the Ukraine war started. You paid for herbicides, pesticides, equipment maintenance. You watched that crop all summer, irrigating when it was dry, spraying when pests showed up. Now it's ready to harvest, and you have to destroy it. Not because it failed, but because harvesting it would make you lose even more money. Some farmers are using discs to chop up the plants and work them back into the soil. Others are letting crops rot in the field, cotton that would make beautiful clothes, rice that could feed families, corn that could become fuel or feed, all going to waste. The actual destruction methods are horrifying to watch. For cotton, farmers are running shredders through the fields, turning white bolls that are ready for picking into mulch. Rice fields that should be drained for harvest are being flooded again to rot the grain faster. Soybean fields are being bush hogged, the beans scattered and crushed into the dirt. Some farmers can't even afford the diesel to destroy their crops properly, so they're abandoning fields entirely. And here's something that makes it even worse, the storage crisis. Farmers who harvested their 2024 crop couldn't sell it at those prices, so they stored it hoping prices would improve. Now they're paying storage costs every month while prices keep dropping. They need the storage space for the 2025 crop, but they can't afford to harvest it, and they can't afford to keep storing the 2024 crop either. Storage facilities are demanding payment or threatening to auction off the grain. Kenneth Graves has been in agriculture for 50 years. He said banks are forecasting 25 to 40% farm bankruptcies. Joel Hargis, a bankruptcy attorney in Jonesboro, said the number of cases he's managing is staggering. Lion Legal actually put up billboards at rice mills advertising bankruptcy services. When lawyers are advertising at grain elevators, you know it's over. The ripple effects are starting, and this is what worries me. Custom harvesters who depend on harvest work are sitting idle. Trucking companies that haul grain are parking their trucks. Grain elevators are laying off workers because there's less grain moving through. Equipment dealers can't sell anything because nobody's buying. John Deere dealers in Arkansas report 0 new cotton picker sales in 6 months. Those are $700,000 machines sitting on lots rusting. Case IH is closing dealerships. The entire agricultural infrastructure is collapsing because farmers can't afford to harvest their crops. Small towns are watching their main streets die. The coffee shop where farmers met every morning is closing. The parts store can't stay open with no equipment sales. Banks are pulling out of rural communities. The cooperative that's been there for 80 years is shutting down. Every farm that goes under takes 10 other businesses with it. The April 2025 floods destroyed $78.9 million worth of crops. Over 260,000 acres of farmland went underwater. But here's the sick part. Farmers who lost those crops to flooding might be better off than farmers with perfect crops. At least the flooded farmers received crop insurance payments. The ones with good crops are losing more money by harvesting them. Diacu Fields, the vice president of agriculture for the University of Arkansas system, said something nobody wants to hear. He said no matter what the yields, the prices are so low and expenses so high, farmers can't yield their way into profitability this year. Record yields in 2024, and farmers still lost money. Perfect growing conditions mean nothing when corn is selling for the same price it was 10 years ago, but costs have doubled. The numbers are staggering. Arkansas farmers are projected to see a shortfall of $1.145 billion for 2025. That's expenses exceeding receipts by over $1 billion. Some economists say it could hit $1.4 billion after rice prices crash to 8-year lows. Without emergency aid, the Agriculture Council of Arkansas says 1 in 3 farms will close. But even farmers who get aid are destroying crops. ECAP payments of $29.50 per acre don't cover losses of $352 per acre on cotton. The Supplemental Disaster Relief Program helps, but not enough. When you're losing hundreds of dollars per acre and getting dozens of dollars back in aid, the math still says destroy the crop. Charles Williams summed it up perfectly. He said, we're at the point where out-yielding is not working. You can grow the best crop in history and still go bankrupt. The inputs have outweighed what producers can yield at these commodity prices for 3 straight years, so farmers are making impossible choices. Destroy the crop and lose the money you already spent growing it, or harvest the crop and lose even more money bringing it in. Either way, the farm is probably done. That's why you're seeing combines sitting idle during harvest season. Fields of mature crops rotting where they stand. Grain bins empty while crops die in the fields. The psychological damage is immense. Farmers are breaking down in their fields, crying as they destroy crops their grandfathers would have celebrated. Farm wives are watching their husbands spiral into depression. Kids are asking why daddy is destroying the corn instead of harvesting it. How do you explain to a child that the food in the field is worth less than the cost to pick it? The human cost here is immeasurable. Families are losing farms that have been in the same family since before Arkansas was a state. Communities are watching their economic foundation crumble. Young people who wanted to farm are being told there's no future in it. Old farmers who survived every crisis until this one are finally admitting defeat. This isn't a natural disaster or a market correction. This is the systematic destruction of American agriculture. When farmers are forced to destroy food while people go hungry, when perfect crops get plowed under because the math says they're worthless, when 10 generations of farming end not with a drought or a flood, but with a calculator, something is fundamentally broken. And here's what really keeps me up at night. Once these farms are gone, once this knowledge and culture is lost, once the infrastructure collapses, it's never coming back. Arkansas is watching its farmland die, not from weather or pests, but from economics that make growing food a guaranteed path to bankruptcy.